Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Million Dollar Failure, Why Homes Don't Sell, and How to Fix It. These are real stories, real fails, and real solutions. And now, here are your hosts, Jeremy and Nicole.
So welcome back to, it's so loud. Oh my God, so loud. Or maybe I am. So welcome back to Million Dollar Failure. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Jeremy.
So we have a guest today.
Yeah, very excited about our guest.
His name is Adam.
And he's from the insurance world.
I know. I didn't know exactly what we're going to talk about, but I'm excited to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, so we came across Adam, as agents. We always recommend several different insurance brokers or agents that can assist our sellers or buyers, things of that nature. And there's one in particular. Her name's Tara, who's really wonderful. We invited her on. She couldn't make it, but she's like, hey, my manager would love to stop by. So that's how we came across Adam, and he's a great guy, and we look forward to talking to him.
Absolutely. So knowledgeable. And it's been such a hot topic, insurance,
Yeah, especially in Florida, right?
I'm so tired of it.
Yeah, it's been pretty incredible, and there has been some positive things happening, running across some good quotes from different companies, but for the most part, yes, it's been difficult.
It's just all the news. They just blow it out of proportion. Like, they want the clickbait on everything.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So, meh. So now here's Adam.
Let's go.
All right. So today we have a guest. Welcome. Thank you so much. So introduce yourself.
My name is Adam Skarbek, and I am with Private Client Insurance and Highmark Insurance. And we specialize in high net worth individuals. And then we do really everything from that to just the ordinary homes and cars and boats and everything here in Florida and across the great United States of America.
Awesome. Yeah, we came across Adam through one of our insurance agents that we follow quite a bit. Tara, she's wonderful. Tara couldn't make it here. Adam was kind enough to join in.
How dare she not make it
on $1 million listing here. So, Adam, I don't know if you haven't been a guest, that I know, but on that's $1 million listing. Oh, we'll be editing real quick.
Cut.
So on $1 million failure, we discuss when listings go wrong, when sellers don't sell, what are the issues, what could have been done to maybe correct it, and that's where we're thinking about insurance and how does insurance come into play.
Right. And it's more from the seller side rather than the buyer side.
Exactly.
Because we're encountering so many listings not moving and what could be done better.
Right. So from your perspective, where does insurance fit into all this on the seller side?
On the seller side, the sellers have to understand the things that are going to come back on their inspections and hopefully know that ahead of time to be able to counter that. Little things like the electrical panels, the water heaters, and making sure, like, one of the things that I see from successful people is like they get those inspections done early. So that way it's not late in the game when you have something that comes up and then you're trying to scramble because people have their moving trucks ready to go and another loan that's getting ready to close and waiting on that. And then, where you have an issue that comes up in the last minute.
What do you see with roofs, right? That seems to be like
that's always
the biggest buzzword. People think, I can't get insurance with an older roof, or I'll be able to get insurance. It's not a big deal. So what's your perspective when roofs, with shingle roofs, get into the ages of 15, 16? What do you see insurance companies doing these days, and what does the seller need to be prepared for?
They need to be prepared to potentially replace that roof prior to. My suggestion would be to at least get a quote on what is it going to end up costing in order to replace that roof, and then having somebody in line, because a lot of the insurance companies they will allow the buyer to purchase it as long as that roof has a contract on it with a date that might be within the next 30 to 60 days. If you wait to the last minute in order to do it, the roofers are busy, right? So they may not be able to get it done in that time frame, which could push back your claim.
Right.
And so with just the contract, does there need to be money held in escrow as well, or not necessarily?
It varies. A lot of times the insurance companies may want to see a deposit made,
Okay.
and then that's up to you guys as far as like whether or not you're holding back from the seller. That's all part of the negotiations, right?
Right.
So, from the insurance side of it, they don't necessarily care. They want to see that, hey, this is going to be done, and then it's going to need to be done in that amount of time. Otherwise, they run the risk of having their policy canceled, and then it becomes very difficult to find something to replace that policy for the new homeowner.
Right. Now, and you had said like you want things to be a little bit more proactive and done early. I know you're not an agent, but from your perspective, should a seller before they list maybe get an inspection or?
I think that's a great idea to do. So then that way you know what these time frames are for these things, right?
Right.
So if you have somebody who's purchasing the house and they're looking and telling you, well, I can't get a roof done for the next 4 months, and they look and say, well, I talked to a roofer and here's one that said they can do it in 3 weeks, then there are certainly more options there.
Yeah. Like we've had, I in the past have never told sellers to do that, but we've had a couple sellers lately like mentioned that they had a pre-inspection done to know ahead of the game, what was on the list. And they checked it all off before listing or in the process of listing. So, but maybe in this market, it's something that needs to be considered. I mean, I always think of the roofs. That always comes up. Roofs, AC, water heater.
That it was an expired, if I remember, and they chose after conversing with us, let's just go ahead and put the roof on that. Let's not wait.
Right.
Advertise the new roof.
Well, that was like that. We were dropping the hammer.
Okay, gotcha.
Well, that's the whole thing too, right? Is it's being able to have that conversation, from your perspective. It's great for us to work with agents like you that will take that proactive stance and making sure that the sellers are reasonable in what they're looking for, right? And understand, hey, if there's nobody that can get insurance on that house, they then limit their pull. It's not that the house can't be sold. They just might have to find someone who's willing to pay cash and is also willing to self-insure that home.
Right.
But I'm not an agent, but I don't think you want to shrink your pool of potential buyers.
Right.
The other thing is the storm protection. I had a house probably 90 feet from the ocean, and they had storm protection on all but the sliders. So when we got the quote, it was $7,500 for the year. But if they just did the sliders, it dropped to like $4,500. So I bet you see that a lot too.
We do. And we see a bigger difference a lot of times in the premium on the roof side of things.
Okay.
But there ends up being very often a very small change and a very small dollar amount that needs to go in to fix one door. Like I've seen where somebody installed a doggy door. Their home used to be fully protected. The doggy door was not. So then that home isn't considered to have full hurricane protection.
Wow.
So if they knew that ahead of time, then they can go get that fixed and say, we have it where it does have the full hurricane protection. So you don't scare off a potential buyer who comes in and they get their inspection. They go to their agent. Their agent says, your home just isn't protected, because a lot of agents will just tell them that instead of saying, hey, here's what you need to do in order to get that full hurricane protection.
Well, I think a good insurance agent does that. Like I have a transaction coordinator. She bids out to several agents, and one in particular will tell the buyers, hey, if you just do this, your rate will drop to about this range.
Yes. And that's where the importance of having good agents to work with on the insurance side is hugely important, right? Because sometimes it's a matter of debt to income ratios for that person qualifying. They can't wait until afterwards in order to replace something because they are tight on that. So we try to work with the realtors, with the lenders to understand what is it that needs to happen to get the homes to close. And those are things that happen on the buyer side. Like we don't talk to the sellers at all from an insurance standpoint, right? So we're not having those conversations. We're having them with the buyers. So we understand that side and making sure that there are no snafus that end up happening along the way to end up killing that deal.
So what's interesting about that, right, is how do you prepare the seller to be able to sell to the buyer, make their home in this tough seller's market more advantageous to come look at my home.
Mhm.
I've already had the inspection. We've already cleaned up the roof. We've got the hot water heater replaced. I think there's an advertisement in the narrative
Mm.
that can lead to a lower priced insurance policy for the buyer, and somehow
There
talking about
is.
that, right?
Well, I have one where they have an A1 rating, and that's kind of rare, and so that's put right out there.
Mhm.
You know, everything's done, everything's replaced, all the storm protection's
Mhm.
there, and but buyers may not know what that means.
That's true too. Yeah, good point. Do you have any like examples of, I don't know, recent insurance quotes or claims or things that have happened that have ruined the sale, like a buyer failed because they something with the insurance, or you have any stories like that?
We tend to really fight to get them done,
Mhm.
right? So I'll tell you an example of one I just had recently where I was notified of the closing about a week before. Right? So,
Yeah.
okay, here you go. And we'll have the inspections to you in 3 days.
Right.
So like, this is great.
Right.
The inspections actually came 2 days before the closing.
Wow.
And on the inspection, and it was something so minor. It was the water heater.
Oh, and they're not expensive.
They're not.
Yeah.
And when this person listed the house, that water heater would have been perfectly acceptable to every insurance company because it was
Yeah.
under 15 years old.
Oh,
It now is taking longer to sell houses.
all right.
Yes.
So then the water heater was over 15 years old once the house went under contract.
Mm.
And there's not enough time to get a plumber to get out there to
Wow.
go and replace that water heater.
Mm.
So something very minor that could fix things very easily.
Mhm.
So what we ended up having to do, we had to go back to the drawing board and find a carrier that was willing to accept it. So we found one that their guideline was 16 years.
Okay. Gotcha.
The premium went from 2,300
Right.
to 3,800.
Wow.
Sometimes that'll kill a deal for
Yes.
somebody.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This particular client understood and said, I'm fine with it.
Mhm.
I'm willing to move on and I'll get it replaced right away.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And of course, having realtors that have the connections in the plumbing world and everything else, because if I were to just call a plumber out of the blue, they may or may not get me in,
Hmm.
to be able to get
Right.
it replaced in time for the insurance company, because the insurance companies are then going to go do their inspection afterwards
Hmm.
and can end up where they find out this is what we have, but this wasn't replaced,
Mhm.
and then, runs into issues
Mhm.
for the buyer.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we spoke earlier about higher end homes, right? We talked about a $72 million property, and how does one go about dealing with it? Like, that's a whole other world of insuring something that's on the Atlantic Ocean that has 15 bedrooms, this it's a huge home, and you specialize in that, right?
We do, yes. And
Right.
the big thing in that, it's just like the rest of them, just bigger,
Mhm.
right? Now, where it's similar to the conversation we were having earlier about limiting your pool of potential buyers,
Mhm.
right? So when you get into that size of house, we're limiting our pool of potential insurers.
Okay.
So there are very few insurance companies out there that will insure those types of homes.
Mhm.
So, and that's where it becomes important to make sure that you're working with insurance agents that work with those types of carriers as well.
Mhm.
Where it's not just, well, yeah, I can do those here and there, but they actually have experience working inside of that. Because when you get into those markets, everyone's heard of Lloyd's of London,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of carriers that work similarly to them, to where they can provide those quotes. Those
Mhm.
get a little bit different with regards to what they require from replacement of the roof and replacement of the water heaters. And they're actually a little bit more liberal when it comes to those things.
Hmm.
But it's all reflected in a price,
Mhm.
right? So people worry about, is this insurable?
Mhm.
Almost everything is insurable.
Right.
There's just a price. It just needs to be profitable for that insurance company.
Right.
And having someone that has the ability to go out to multiple markets, and the person who's buying a house that's
Mhm.
that amount of money,
Yeah.
they're familiar with those markets.
Right.
They're not your standard Florida carriers. There are a lot of people that are going to, that would be the ones to buy that house. They have more money than the insurance companies that insure people in the state of Florida have.
Right.
That doesn't give them a heck of a lot of comfort.
Right.
Right.
That's
So
funny. Yeah.
getting to these other markets that understand how to insure those homes is very important.
Is there any additional level of inspection that takes place by the insurance company, or is it the same type of service that you would get insuring a $500,000 home here versus a $72 million home? Does the insurance company get more involved when they make that decision to insure that property?
They do. The insurance companies, when they're insuring the homes that are larger, they're going to go out and they're going to do a replacement cost estimate as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the standard that most people are used to is an insurance agent punches in a bunch of numbers.
Mm-hmm.
They say the floor has this percentage of carpet, this percentage of hardwood, this percentage of tile, and that report spits out a number.
Okay.
And that replacement cost, quite frankly, isn't super accurate as far as like what it would truly cost to rebuild a house. Right. So
right.
In this market, what they end up doing is they actually go out and they look at the house. They look at the finish. They look at the crown molding. They look at the countertops. They look at the appliances. They look at all of the fit and finish of that home, and understanding that a custom builder
Yeah.
is going to charge a lot more than what your track home builders are going to.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So they're then able to figure out what will it cost to rebuild that home, because at the end of the day, on some of these properties, they may be, 10 million, 15, 20 million dollars, but a lot of that value's in the land. That has nothing to do with the insurance part of it. The insurance is concerned with replacing that home in the event that something happens to it, and rebuilding it to what it is at that time.
Right.
The other thing that gets factored in too, you and I can negotiate a heck of a lot more and better with a builder than an insurance company can. So sometimes people will build a house for a particular price, and they'll say, I can go get this house rebuilt for $800 a square foot or whatever that amount is. You can, I can, the insurance company can't. The builders are not negotiating with the insurance companies when the house burns to the ground or there are repairs that are made. The insurance companies aren't getting deals on those things. So that all gets factored in on the inspection. The other nice thing that happens in those inspections is they actually are looking for things that may lay ways for a potential claim, right? So they're looking at the hoses on the washer and dryer. They're looking for things that might potentially lead to damage, so that way the clients can fix those things, because a lot of times they have higher deductibles. Right? They're going to have a $10,000, a $25,000, a $100,000 deductible. So if you have a deductible that high, it's worth it to spend some more money in order to fortify things to prevent potential claims.
Well, I think the value of the contents to insure it would be a lot higher too, clearly.
It is. And a lot of insurance companies will set just a standard percentage of the dwelling amount for what the contents coverage is. That number is probably 99% of the time more than what a client would say that they have in personal property there. But the insurance companies don't want to lose on the side of they actually had more. That becomes an issue for them when the client says, I have way more than that, and you didn't have me properly insured because you didn't come and actually value my contents. The insurance companies don't value contents when they go out and look at it. They're just looking at the actual replacement cost of the home.
Oh, geez. Forgot the question.
Really?
Yeah, I did.
Well, it's a big topic of conversation. Condos.
Yes.
Do you hate condos?
I hate condos. I love condos. Everyone should buy one.
Everyone should buy a condo.
Yeah.
Condos present their own challenges, and as we know, we've seen an increase on the insurance side in cost of those condos, and I'm sure you all have seen where their assessments have gone up, right? I think I just read something the other day where there was a condo that had, I think it was $150,000 assessment for each of their unit owners.
Wow.
So that's not the highest I've seen.
Right. There's certainly bigger, and the people in there, can they afford that? Right. And a lot of people can't. And then all of a sudden they have to move for that.
Yep.
So a lot of times people wonder, like, why is it that the cost on the condos is higher, right? So we all understand that what happened down in Sunrise, and there was a building that collapsed,
Mhm.
right? And then condos that were made later started having more
Right.
that was put into them, and their construction was a little bit different to help prevent that type of thing from happening.
Mhm.
But what ends up happening, and then all of these kind of get grouped together, is water losses. And where what you'll see, and especially as you get into the bigger cities and you have a building that's 35 stories,
Mhm.
and there ends up being water damage and a pipe that bursts in the unit on the 35th story, and that leaks into all of the units down below that.
Mm. Hmm.
That unit owner can be held liable
Oh,
wow.
for the damage from that.
Wow.
So, which of course then ends up getting passed on to the
Absolutely.
insurance company,
Mhm.
right?
Absolutely.
So that's why we've seen such a huge increase in premium from a condo standpoint, a big part of it.
Mhm.
Thank goodness we don't have like 35-story.
Not in the Space Coast.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Now you got me thinking about the tallest one, but it's
They're like 12,
yeah. They're not.
even though. But
They all get grouped together though,
They
is where
do.
the problem is. So the 3-story one,
Mm.
it's what, over 3 stories? Or
it doesn't matter.
Okay.
You'll even see, so some you'll have single family dwelling
Mhm.
Mhm.
that is registered as a condo.
Hmm.
The insurance company places it into a condo bucket, which tells them that the pricing should be this,
Mhm.
even though that they don't really have the risk of these things happening where something happens and it leaks and damages another unit.
Do you see any positive um, cost improvements for insurance on the horizon? They talk about the state trying to do things to help with costs, things of that nature. I know, like in Palm Bay, new construction, because it's
Mhm.
new construction and it's Palm Bay, insurance is extremely low compared to the resales around the area. So, two different topics, I get it, but maybe start with the state first, is what you know of anything that might be happening.
Yeah, the state has done a ton over the last probably 4 to 5 years to try to fix the insurance problem in the state of Florida. Have they done enough? In my estimation, no, they haven't. Are they taking the necessary steps and the first steps?
Mm.
Yes. So I would say like we're starting to see a leveling
Okay.
of premiums.
Mhm.
I actually saw an article today
Mhm.
that said that premiums have actually dropped.
Hmm.
And it's
Interesting.
starting to happen. Yeah, there's a lot of carriers that are reporting lower premiums,
Interesting.
and they're not asking for the same types of increases that they've been asking for.
Okay.
So now Citizens Insurance,
Mhm.
which is the state-run insurance company, which is meant to be the insurer of last resort,
Mhm.
has taken on a ton of policies over the last few years.
Yes.
Yes.
And what's happening right now, which is to me is a positive sign of things are heading in the right direction, is there are a lot of new insurance companies
Mhm.
and a lot of ones that have been here for a bit that are now taking out a lot of the citizens policies.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
some of them, it's tens of thousands of policies that they're taking on,
Good.
and which makes them feel comfortable about the potential for losses in those. So as long as that continues, I think that we can start to see first a leveling,
Mhm.
and then hopefully, we start to see a drop in it. But I also saw there was recently a new proposal, I think that was passed by the House in the state of Florida, to try to revert back on some of the changes that were made
Mhm.
and reinstituting, they call one-way attorneys fees, which will make some insurance companies pull back and say, wait a minute, we're not really ready to go all in here.
Mhm.
So I think that we're treading in very dangerous waters, where that could create a pullback in this. And then obviously the more insurance carriers that are out there,
Right.
competition, right?
It helps.
It helps, and that'll help bring it down.
So should homeowners, is now a good time to bid out, like rebid out their homeowners insurance, you think? Or how often should they do that?
Not every year.
No, not every year.
And generally speaking, having an agent that just understands the market
Okay.
on the insurance side is the most important thing, and saying, you know what, it may be worth it to do every 3 to 5 years
Mhm.
to just keep your insurance company in check and make sure that you're still with the one that does provide the most value for you.
Mhm.
Because some insurance companies do really well on homes that are brand new construction.
Mhm.
Some are more competitively priced, maybe from 10 to 15 years. Some are more competitively priced at different times. So who you're with when you first get started isn't necessarily who you want to be with later on.
Mhm.
But we try to caution people about just jumping because insurance companies have to apply for rate increases from the state. So what we tend to see a lot of times is interest rates will move along at a clip where they're going up a little bit, going up a little bit, going up a little bit, and then there will be a big jump in their rate. So at that time, most people will say, let me go shop this insurance, and they go look for another insurance company.
Mhm.
What ends up happening when they do that, they go find an insurance company that hasn't had that rate increase and that big pop. So then they move to a new insurance company who has been actually plodding along. And then the next year, they end up having their big rate increase.
Mm.
And then theirs ends up being higher than what they were. So we use a term called chasing the carrot
Right.
for that. And
Right.
it's, you have to be very careful just chasing that carrot
Mhm.
and not move just to save a couple dollars here and there too, right? So everyone's pain point is a little bit different in that. That's figuring out what is it that makes sense and when does it make sense to move. But we are limited in the number of carriers that we have.
Mhm.
And sometimes when insurance companies go back out to do their inspection, they may say, we won't insure this house. There's a problem here, and whatever that problem ends up being,
Mhm.
and then they can't get back into the other insurance company because that other insurance company isn't insuring
Oh.
anymore in that area, or they would have stayed on a policy, but they wouldn't write it new.
Can you talk about if I'm a homeowner, I have my place for sale, I have a really good rate, the possibility of passing that policy on to the buyer?
There's really no correlation. It's not, the homeowner's policy can't be passed along.
Okay.
There was one carrier that was allowing people, as long as they were already insuring that house, that they would continue to insure it, but they would insure it at whatever their current rates are.
Okay.
So there may be changes in that, but where it can be helpful is just knowing, hey, here is an insurance company that was insuring it at this premium,
Mhm.
right? So then the buyer knows, let me at least talk to an agent who represents that company and go have that conversation and find out, will they insure it and what would their premium look like?
Right.
So there's definitely value in that. Now, it's different for flood
Flood.
insurance.
Yep.
Mhm.
So on the flood insurance side, and this is another thing that we talk to our clients about all the time, and would love to see more agents out getting this information and having it out there for people, is making sure people are aware of whether or not the seller has a flood insurance policy.
Mhm.
Because if they have a flood insurance policy, then the person who's purchasing the home can either assume that policy or write a new policy at grandfathered rates.
Mhm.
So we've seen where people that are in zone X, and a lot of people like to talk about, well, I'm not in a flood zone. Everybody is in a flood zone everywhere. It just happens to be you're in a low risk flood zone.
Mhm.
So, and those low risk flood zones don't require you to have flood insurance if you have a mortgage.
Right.
If you're in those special flood hazard areas,
Mhm.
those are the ones that your mortgage company is required to have you carry the insurance. Now, we've seen a change in pricing on flood insurance, and this happened about 4 or 5 years ago. Completely revamped all of the pricing on it.
Mhm.
And I've seen homes that are in quote unquote low risk flood zones
Mhm.
where the premiums were somewhere around, they used to be 417, went up to 451, 471. They may be paying somewhere around $700 right now.
Yeah.
$13,000
Yeah.
and up
Oh,
Wow.
crazy.
I haven't seen that yet. Yeah.
for $250,000 in coverage. I've seen
Yeah.
some on Merritt Island
Okay.
and priced some out
Yeah.
there, and
Wow.
they're not in a flood zone.
Yeah.
This is a big issue in Vero Beach,
Right.
especially on the island.
Okay.
So dealt with it a lot there.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a great selling tool for for the agents and
Mhm.
understanding that, and because I've had people where they'd say, I'm going to drop my flood insurance because I'm selling my house.
Hmm.
I'm like, no. That's the reason to keep it.
Yeah,
Because you make your house more marketable.
absolutely.
Your house has this, theirs doesn't. $12,000 difference potentially in what
Mhm.
this person's going to pay in insurance. It may steer somebody.
I think that's a great key, like in the summary of what's good for the seller when it comes to insurance, and
Right.
that's a huge bullet point that you have that flood insurance that it could be grandfathered in and used to tip in helping sell the property.
Oh, absolutely. It's, especially down in Indian River.
Mhm. Mhm.
Such an issue there.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, we've seen that a lot more in Brevard County as well.
Lately.
Like between the causeways, I've seen flood policies, $3,000, $6,000, $7,000
Yeah.
that for homes that are in Zone X.
I think there's some geographical areas that we won't mention that are surprising they're in X, right?
Right.
Like it's surprising to a certain extent, right? So
There's a joke where the Highlands
Mm,
that are
yeah.
down in Bureau.
yeah. So the insurance companies know it though, right? And now or if they didn't know it statistically, they're realizing it and they're starting to say, yeah, well, you want that flood insurance in X zone because you live on this particular
Yeah.
piece of land.
We
They
had
believe it's not so much a restricted
right.
flood zone. Yeah.
We had an insurance symposium. I don't know, it was months, half a year ago, and the insurance agent said, they asked, like, if it's you, what would your advice be? And I remember one of the guys said, I would self-insure wind, but I would pay for flood.
Hmm.
What would you tell people? What are your advice to sellers and homeowners in general?
It all depends on your financial wherewithal,
Mhm.
right? So when I'm talking to clients and that are looking at potentially self-insuring, I look at it and say, would you be able to live your life the same way that you're living it now if you were to have a total loss from this particular event,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And if the answer is yes, then now you're into that.
Mhm.
Yes, it may make sense for you to self-insure.
Mhm.
Then it becomes, well, really, what is that premium, right? And you have to look at what is the difference in premium, including the wind, and then what is it without it.
Right.
So it may be worth it. Now, we'll have a lot of clients that'll come back and say, my house is a fortress. It's not going anywhere. It's made it through all of these storms. It's not going to be an issue.
Mhm.
Your
I
own
just feel like
expenses-
knocking on wood now anywhere. Like that's just jinxing. I've been in Florida my whole life. We don't say that.
and insuring all over the country, we've seen flooding in areas that it makes no sense that it flooded. There was a storm that went up through Louisiana,
Especially now.
passed up through Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. And I
Mhm.
had 3 clients in those states. One that was on like almost the side of a hill that ended up with flooding.
Wow.
And, down here, I think people understand a little bit more the risk of flooding.
Mhm.
Right.
Up there,
No.
they don't. And, and nobody had it, right? I mean, it's the same thing that we just saw last year
Mhm.
passing up through North Carolina.
Yeah.
None of those people thought that
No.
they needed it.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing. We didn't really think a tornado could rip through Vero Beach and Port St. Lucie, and not such a large tornado. We don't just have the tiny ones. We're not afraid of. We're Floridians. We're not afraid of hurricanes, but like we're used to them. We know that's the risk. We didn't expect tornadoes
Mhm.
and such devastation.
Mhm.
So
I agree. And,
weather's wacky.
and the same with the hail, right?
The hail, that was crazy.
It was. I've been in Florida since 1987 and really had not heard anything
Never.
about hailstorms until, was it 2019? 2017? The first one.
I don't remember. I wasn't here on this coast when that one happened.
So
So
we had,
I hadn't seen it.
yeah, so inside of 4 years, we ended up having 2 major hailstorms that just damaged really the same areas too.
Mhm.
And I remember seeing pictures of people on social media with softball size
Yeah.
ice,
Yeah.
that came through their window,
Yeah.
and we're not prepared for that,
No.
and like you mentioned about the tornadoes, that's the thing, right? So you sit there and look at it and you may not be worried about a hurricane
Mhm.
with sustained winds damaging your home.
Mhm. Mhm.
But if that tornado rips through,
Totally
that's a
different.
different story.
Yeah.
So again, you have to just make sure like you can survive that financially
Mhm.
if you're going to make that decision to self-insure.
That's the thing is like self-insuring is interesting. You know, like the one on the beach that I was selling. $4,500 a year is really nothing compared to a $800,000 house. Like just just pay the insurance.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, nobody likes paying for insurance, right? It's the one thing that
No, I
everyone
hate it.
buys
Mhm.
and they hope that they never use.
Right.
Right. So we get it as insurance agents as well. And it's just like
Mhm.
nobody likes it. I don't like it. Nobody likes
No,
it.
no one likes to write that check.
But you sure are glad that you have it and you have a good company
Mhm.
when you have something that happens and you have it be covered.
Mhm.
Right.
Right.
And you'll see, and we hear stories all the time from clients where they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that I had this. My neighbor's been dealing with this for months now, and my roof is fixed, my
Right.
screen is fixed. So it's also understanding that and making sure that you're with the strongest companies out there.
Absolutely. Customer service matters. Like it's the same thing with lenders. Don't chase the rate. You know, you also need somebody who can close it, give you good customer service. It's
Yep.
the same thing with insurance.
Yeah.
It is.
So, but that being said, I mean, he introduced himself, but where can we find your company? What
Right.
is the website? How can they contact you? We can put it down on the screen.
Perfect. You go to www.highmark, and Tara Gardner is our primary sales agent to reach out to. She is fantastic. We'll get back quickly. Jeremy, I know that you've worked with her
Yes.
a ton in the past.
Yeah.
She really knows the markets and knows the carriers to look out for. Phone number is 321-253-6011. We're located right here in Brevard County on US 1 in Melbourne.
And then, so you said obviously you do Florida and so you do the whole nation.
We do. So on the private client insurance side, I can be reached on my cell phone is the
Okay.
best number, and that number is 321-917-1780. And it's worldwide PCI.com
Mm-hmm.
is our website.
Mhm.
And we insure across the entire country. So we see things that happen all over. We work with a lot of successful families and high net worth individuals. We do a lot with professional athletes and coaches, and that's the kind of the fun part of the business. But just a lot of executives and people who talk about the self insurance side that understand that and have the capability to do that.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you guys.
That's it for today's episode of Million Dollar Failure. A huge thank you to Adam for sharing his experience with us.
And if you've ever had a home that didn't sell and want to share your story, whether for advice, a second chance, or just a vent, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us at milliondollarfailures with an S at gmail.com to be considered for a future episode.
And if you are thinking about selling and want our help to get it right the first time, email us. We are here to help. We're helping several sellers right now.
Yep. Big shout out to Jeffrey French at Grit and Grind Studios, our producer.
And if you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share. Hit all the button, review us everywhere you're listening, and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. Jeremy's on Threads. Jeremy's on X.
I am on X.
Are you on Threads too?
I am not on Threads.
We are technically.
There we are. I am on Threads.
To keep up with the new episodes and the behind the scenes content.
And if you're a brand or business interested in sponsoring the show, hit us up. Let's talk.
I think we could get some good exposure for someone.
Absolutely.
So thanks for tuning in. Until next time, once again, I'm Nicole.
And I'm Jeremy.